Hey guys, LevelCap here. Today I've got some Destiny beta gameplay. Now, I have been jonesing for some Destiny ever since the alpha ended. I think I officially got addicted to this game during the alpha, and I just cannot get enough of it. I'm really infatuated with the lore and the art style and just everything about this game. This time around, I actually got to play a bit more of the PvP side of things, but first I really want to explore the world and see what changed. Now, this time around, the beta actually starts off in what I think is the actual beginning of the game. Should you buy the retail version of this, you will start off the game in the same way that the beta is starting off now, with some very cool intro movies and building up the lore and explaining some of the backstory. Not all of the backstory. There still is this ominous the darkness, as they keep talking about in the storyline, which you don't really know much about other than the darkness is coming, it's going to attack Earth, and you have to prepare for it. This is a Bungie game after all, so you would expect kind of cheesy lines talking about the darkness and the prophecy and all of that stuff. They do have a big fantasy background. Having personally been a big fan of their myth games, I'm quite familiar with a lot of their storytelling. And here I am doing a bit of work with my heavy machine gun. Now, each class gets 3 types of weapons. You have your standard primary weapon, then you have a special weapon, which can be something like a shotgun or a sniper rifle or a weird energy rifle, and then you have a heavy weapon, which is usually a rocket launcher or a machine gun or some sort of variation of that. At the moment, it doesn't look like there's any weapons that are class specific, but I do believe that there will be some as the game progresses further. You can only rank up to rank 8 in the beta, much like the alpha, so you can't really explore the later levels of the game, but I really think the end game to Destiny is going to be where a lot of the fun is at, much like a traditional MMO. Here I'm using a revolver as a primary weapon. Now, I would have thought this would have been a specialty weapon, but it is actually the primary, so I guess you could have a shotgun as a backup to this. This thing does massive damage, especially if you get headshots. One thing that I really like about this game is that they reward you massively for headshots. It's a 3 times damage multiplier for hitting people in the head, so you absolutely want to go for your headshots. And it's a cool way of being able to fight higher ranked baddies if you are a good shot. Sometimes you can definitely hold your own with higher ranked players by going for the head or really showing where your skills are. The missions themselves have no shortage of boss fights and halfway boss fights in series where you have to fight off waves of baddies coming at you. And they're actually a lot of fun, really entertaining, and the voice acting of Peter Dinklage this time around has actually seemed to improve a bit. Here I am in one of the final missions of the beta, and we are fighting the preliminary boss called a Devil Walker. These guys can actually be just dropped into the standard world as you're running around for a community event, and they're very tricky to take down. You got to make sure you put a lot of fire into their legs, exposing the neck piece. I really like kind of some of these classic progression boss fights here, where you got to do something to expose the boss's weaker point. It's very classic in a lot of ways, but still feels like a very modern game. And that move right there is a Nova Bomb. It is the Warlock super ability. Each class gets a super ability, and each of the subclasses actually has a different super ability. So the 3 classes in the game are Warlock, Hunter, and Titan. And of those 3 classes, there are different subclasses which contain different super abilities. Now, supers are very important because they are one of the main defining characteristic of each class. It's something that charges up while you're playing single player. The more enemies you kill, the faster it will charge up. Otherwise, it charges up over time. You can also use your supers in multiplayer to great effect. Currently, the Warlock is great for AoE damage at range, where the Hunter is great at dishing out massive damage to single targets, and the Titan can take on a lot of damage and dish out good AoE in close quarters. Certainly, it sounds a lot like a traditional MMO, making it really beneficial to have a party of mixed classes to do best for a lot of the single-player missions. When it comes to multiplayer, it's hard to say what's going to be the best solution, but there are some very interesting-looking abilities and subclasses that could come in really handy for multiplayer. For example, the Hunter is going to get a lot of cool abilities that allow it to go invisible. This is going to be so freaking useful in multiplayer, and I can't wait to see how that plays out. In this clip here, I'm finishing up a mission where I'm getting swarmed by a lot of different enemy dropships, and this is essentially one of the final guys that I have to fight before it ends and I get my reward. Now let's switch over to the multiplayer. Multiplayer in Destiny is called the Crucible. You can take your single player character into the Crucible, use all your normal gear in the Crucible to give you an advantage, and there's also a normal play mode where it basically takes your guns and your gear and it kind of normalizes them so that nobody has a huge advantage over each other. other. This is where you're going to really get to test out your character and your abilities against other players with similar abilities, and it's also going to be the great defining factor of what classes are good for PvE and what classes are good for PvP. Certainly there's going to be some subclasses that already look like they're going to be amazing for some of the PvP in this game, but it's very hard to predict who is going to be the best at this point, and I think it really comes down to your playstyle. Do you want to be a brawler and play in close quarters a lot? Well, then the Titan might be your character of choice. Do you want to be more of an assassin or a sniper type player? Then you might enjoy the Hunter the best. Do you want to do massive AoE at range? Well, then the Warlock might be awesome. And then again, you have subclasses for each of those classes, so you can kind of manipulate them to your will. For example, the Hunter can become an incredibly powerful melee class provided you use the right subclass. Now, what's really cool about playing in the Crucible is that you're going to get these tokens that are going to allow you to essentially buy gear that is very specific to playing in the Crucible. So if you don't want to play the single player, you could potentially just play nothing but PvP in this game and have a good time doing that and get better gear and armor and items. You can also rank up while playing PvP, and I'm sure that a lot of players in the beta are rank 8 by playing nothing but PvP, and it's a very cool way to play the game, and it just gives you versatility. Say you're not into the MMO aspect of this game and you just want another Bungie multiplayer game. Well, here it is, and it actually plays out really well. It's very, very reminiscent of Halo. There's even some vehicles and turrets and stuff like that in it. But I like the differentiation in classes with the super abilities, and it just adds in a whole new factor as to what kind of character you are and what engagement scenarios you are the best at. Now, one area of this game that might ultimately hurt Destiny in the competitive arena, which would be really unfortunate, is the fact that it only runs at 30 FPS. Now, the reason that this game runs at 30 FPS is because they wanted the same experience on old gen consoles versus new gen consoles, and I am so annoyed with this mindset and this reason for doing things, so that people on older consoles aren't complaining about not having as good of a looking game as the new gen consoles. I really don't understand that mindset. If you have an old gen console, then it's like having an older computer. It's just not going to look as good. What's the problem? It's a good incentive to get the market to try and change and buy the new systems, because games look a lot better on the new systems. I really don't understand what the problem is with that philosophy there. There's nothing wrong with it. There's this weird fairness thing going on, and frankly 30 FPS on a shooter just isn't enough by today's standards, especially coming from somebody who's used to PC gaming at 100 plus FPS. 30 is painful. Now granted, the next gen console version of Destiny has more particle effects and shinier textures and cooler visuals and all that sort of stuff, but still 30 FPS, man. It's 2014. Get with it, Bungie. If you want something that's going to be hugely successful in the competitive arena, then give us 60 FPS. That being said, I'm still a sucker and I'm still going to play this game, play the PvP and the single player. The artwork, the lore, everything about this game is top notch. It's really cool, and I can't wait to get into this game and play every single element of it, all the side missions, all the PvP, rank up my character. I just can't wait for this game. What do you guys think? Would you like to see more Destiny content on this channel? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you guys next time. This is LevelCap signing off.